Right, good morning and welcome to MPL. My name's MartynSene, I'm the Deputy Director here, and it really is a pleasure to welcome you here today and to thank you very much for taking, certainly in these times of austerity, taking time out to spend a day with us, because, as I'm going to say in a moment, today is primarily for ultimately for your benefit, but immediately for the benefit of us here at MPL to understand the needs of this community in measurement. And my job for about 10 minutes or so is to give you a little bit of background and to explain the format of the day before I hand over to Julian Dean, who's going to be chairing the meeting. So as you'll all, I'm sure, know, MPL is about measurement and about helping the UK public and private and international organisations to have confidence in the measurements that are being made. And when anybody's trying in business, in government or in society to make a measurement in which they need to have confidence, there is a number of components they need to have. One is to have an instrument that's calibrated. One is to have an agreed procedure for using an instrument. You'd like to have somebody trained who understands how to make the measurement, and if the measurement has any regulatory or other critical aspects to it, you'll probably need third-party verification. But how do you get that? And there is an infrastructure that we sit at the heart of that tries to ensure that there is that confidence when people make measurements. And there's a couple of concepts that I'm sure most of you here understand, but I'll just kind of run through that lock confidence into those measurements. And the first is the concept of traceability, and that's, as you all know, the idea that you have an unbroken chain of calibration from the end user measurement back to a central organisation in each country. And in the UK, the National Measurement Institute is MPL, and there are designated institutes who have responsibility for some other aspects of measurement: National Engineering Laboratory, the Government Chemist, LGC. And that unbroken chain of calibration back to us, which can be a long chain, as in the case of a kind of ruler I use to measure the width of an alcove, through to no chain at all in the case of things like radiotherapy. That unbroken chain locks a calibration for all the instrumentation used in the country back to a common standard here at MPL. But we do, of course, operate not in nation states that are isolated from the rest of the world, and certainly a lot of people I know sitting here today work in international organisations where trade relies on them being able to demonstrate the equivalence of the things they do here to the equivalence of things they do in other countries. So there is a need to lock all of those measurements into an international system, and that's demonstrated by equivalence, which is coordinated by the headquarters of the International Measurement System in Paris, and there's a quite complex system of comparisons that take place at the level of National Measurement Institutes such as MPL to demonstrate the equivalence of our measurement standards and the standards that we disseminate through the traceability chain with those in other nations. And those measurements are not just at the level of mass, length, time, but they are actually domain specific, and indeed, in the sphere in which we're talking today, isotope nuclide specific. And so we will have to demonstrate that our calibration, our standard for iron 55, for cesium-137, for whatever the nuclide is equivalent for that nuclide with the other national measurement institutes around the world. And that pulls together a confidence and a consistency globally in measurement, and also provides an understanding of the uncertainty of those primary measurements that get disseminated globally. Now, if nothing ever changed in the world, if science didn't change, if technology didn't change, if nobody ever wanted any different activities, if government didn't change its policies, if there were never any new challenges, then we could set that system up and it would run like clockwork and like a machine, and to be frank, MPL will be quite a dull place to work. But we all know the world's not like that. science moves on, technology moves on, new challenges arise, and certainly in the business that we're in and we're talking about today, in decommissioning, there are constantly new challenges and new things to be done. And so wrapped around that system of equivalence and traceability, there is a need constantly to do research and development and to think about and to prepare for the measurement needs that we see coming down the track tomorrow, the day after, a year's time, 10 years' time. And so wrapped around that on the left-hand side, we work here at MPL closely with research and technology organisations, with academia, and increasingly with industry itself, to develop new science, new technology, new data, and new facilities, and put in place new facilities that help prepare for the measurements in the future. And on the right-hand side, also working with other organisations to put in place the documentary standards, training, and do a whole lot of knowledge transfer, sharing of the knowledge that we have here to ensure that people can continue to have confidence in the measurements tomorrow, next year, 5 years, 10 years' time. So that's the role that we play. And specifically in the area of ionising radiation, and particularly in radioactivity, this is the kind of shape of the work that we're doing. Obviously, at the heart of what we have to do, we develop primary standards, the ultimate reference point, the thing that we compare through equivalence with other nations. And we also develop secondary standards, things that are actually easier to disseminate, things that you can reproduce, often in radioactivity through the well ionisation chamber is the route that we do a lot of our secondary standard dissemination. Measurements that are easier to make on a day-to-day basis. And those are the things that absolutely are at the heart of ensuring the traceability and providing the underpinning confidence. But applying those things and thinking about the measurement issues, the measurement problems, the measurement solutions needs to be taken out from the kind of abstruse, just for a particular nuclide, down into a particular application. And there are 5 areas there in which we particularly work to understand how we can improve measurement in nuclear medicine, environmental radioactivity, nuclear security, radiation protection, and today of particular interest, nuclear decommissioning. And then wrapped around that, we do an enormous amount of work to ensure that we engage with all the external people who have an interest in the work that we're doing here. And those arrows in that ring are two-way, because we not only want to disseminate the knowledge that we generate out to people like yourselves, but particularly, and very relevant to today, we decide what we're going to do in the future and how we're going to have a strategy for the work we're doing by listening to the communities who are going to need to have confidence in measurements going off into the future. Now, in the past, I don't think it was ever the case that the government funded MPL to the extent that all of those boxes were covered with any amount of money that we wanted. But certainly in these sort of less than financially secure times, the dark blue boxes are certainly covered by the core funding we get from the government. The lighter blue boxes, when we go into doing the work specifically for sectors or particularly for applications, there's usually competition, strong competition for our core funding, and we have to make a very good case for where that funding is going to go. We're also strongly encouraged to work with partners to do contract R&D for them, or to do projects through co-funding, to look for European funding and other funding routes to help supplement the core government funding that we get in the areas, particularly in the areas where there are the light blue boxes. So that's some background, but today is about listening and helping us to prioritise what the industry requirements are for radioactivity measurements in the context of nuclear decommissioning and site clearance. So we're primarily in listening mode today. Julian's going to set the scene with some more about some of the things that we do. After that, the other speakers this morning are going to be people from industry who are going to present some of the issues as they see it. And then, having listened, we will try and prioritise from what we hear what are the needs in this sector, and we'll try and meet those requirements for formulating work to go into the National Measurement System programme, which is a core government funding, looking for other funding sources like EU and EMRP, looking to work with people like yourselves for co-funding or contract R&D, and even providing commercial services, but providing services on a commercial basis to help you. And so the format today is, as I said this morning, there's a presentation by MPL and then by industry experts, and I'm sure that I've heard almost all of the speakers who are going to speak this morning, so I know they're in for a good time. And over curry last night, they told me to say that, so that's absolutely the case. And then this afternoon, it's syndicate discussions that we hope are going to be, the discussion is going to be seeded by the presentations this morning, and then we'll collate the findings. And at the end of the day, there are some lab tours for those who can stay, and this is the timetable. So about 3:30, those who can stay on for an extra hour, there are some lab tours for those who would like to see some of the facilities here. So I think that's all I'm going to say, and I'll hand over to Julian to take you through the rest of the day.